Okay, so within the span of just 1 week, I went from regularly uploading my review to creating an entire short movie and creating a parody song of a song that died out like 20 years ago. How can I top it? Ladies and gentlemen, what is up? Welcome back to another video. Smash the subscribe button and stick around for the fake giveaway as we review the top 10 hottest chicks in your area. Nope, that's not it.
Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to another unboxing challenge. I was sent this box of goodies, so let's find out what's inside of here. Let's see. First we got this, thing. Look at how beautiful this thing is, guys. I love the shapes and the colors of... I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh yes, finally! Something I can do! Hey peeps, today I'm gonna enjoy this 20-piece box of chicken nuggets.
A few moments later.
Oh, that sure was tasty. Oh, well guys, thanks for...
Hey man, you gotta finish the rest of it too.
Wait, there's more? Oh no.
Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to yet another video. In the last episode we did some off-camera work and today I have created this beautiful little home, if I do say so myself. I'll show you the inside of... Oh my god, no. I'm not even gonna try that. Hey guys, welcome back. Make sure you subscribe for more. Yeah, oh no, never mind, just forget about it. Let's get on with the video already. Hey everybody, welcome back to our quest for the best total drama season. My name is Silly Billy, but you can call me Billy. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a great day. After 6 long videos, today we finally reach our goal. A lot of anger and appraisal later, and we find ourselves with just 1 more season to go. If you happen to be new to the series, I highly recommend you stop watching this video right now. Instead, go watch the earlier episodes in this series and then come back later. I promise you that if this video seemed interesting to you, then the others will probably do so too. If you made it this far in though, please consider subscribing to the channel. I have a lot more stuff planned after the series has ended, so please consider showing your support down below. Tell me in the comments down below what you think of my picks from the worst to the best. Do you agree with what I said? Do you think I shouldn't be allowed an opinion? Whatever it may be, please let's have a fun and civil discussion down below. All of this is subjective, and if you have another season at number 1, that is completely fine. But guys, we have a long video ahead of us, so without further ado, I give you number 1. Total Drama presents The Redonkulous Race. The Redonkulous Race is a spin-off of the original Total Drama series. The show introduces a completely new game format from what we are used to, dropping out the voting, the merging, and host Chris McLean to give us something we haven't gotten to see before. Teams of 2 race around the world where they try desperately not to be the last team to reach the carpet of completion, which count as a sort of checkpoint on their race. The team that reaches one last is usually going home until one team is left standing. To get the most obvious remarks out of the way, a lot of you will probably not have the Redonkulous Race on number 1. Sure, it's a great season, but World Tour or even Island deserve the spot over the Redonkulous Race, right? And yes, you're totally allowed to think that. And for the longest time, I actually had World Tour on my number 1 spot too. But it was as I was planning out the order for these videos that I started to realize that that thought might not be as accurate to my current feelings as I thought. I had just watched every single season with my girlfriend, and the Redonkulous Race just mesmerized me in a way that it hadn't done before. I came to the realization that my idea that World Tour was the best season was outdated, and that a new champion had found its way to the top. But why? As I was getting closer to writing this script, I started to think about it more and more. Why would I put the Redonkulous Race on number 1? What does this season present that makes me think it beats Heather's story arc, or the songs, or the fun that I had with the World Tour in general? Sure, it's ultimately my opinion, but I couldn't just write down this video is number 1 because I like it the most. You thought Game of Thrones had a bad finale? Imagine if that was the way this series ended. So for this video, I'm going to mix things up a bit. Instead of presenting you with the findings of my discovery, I am going with you on this final journey. Not to find the best season of Total Drama, but to find out why it's the Redonkulous Race. Let's start with the actual setup of the Redonkulous Race. The Redonkulous Race mixes things up by not having individual contestants, but instead having teams of 2. This is such a great twist of the format, and it allows the show to have character dynamics and interactions it never got the chance to have before. Not only that, but since there is no voting or anything, teams are left to fend for themselves. Be the worst team and you're they're out of here. Simple as that. No longer do we have floating bubbles magically poof their way into the finale, or people that wouldn't stand a chance in real life teleport to the final two by the power of underdog. And the show wholeheartedly uses this to its advantage too. Two idiots that are more focused on their magic than trying to reach the finish line? Boom, first boot. Two grandpas who are no longer very physical and are constantly arguing with one another? Second boot. Two girls who value perfectionism over speed? Don't even make it to the carpet at all. You get my point. Like the Total Drama seasons, the Redonkulous race clearly sets out some teams to watch out for. They are the smart ones, the strong ones, they get the most screen time, aka they're most likely going to stick around for a while. But unlike the other seasons, Redonkulous race also takes this the other way around. Weaker teams that show a flaw in their plan or execution are likely the ones that go to the chopping block. It's only logical in a show where the worst player drops out until only one remains. The final 7 teams of this season each get first in at least one other episode, proving that they are worthy contestants and increasing the tension around the question who of them will ultimately be victorious. But this also works the other way around. Whenever your favorite team goofs up, there's an instant threat that this is their last episode on the show. Whereas Total Drama has suspenseful moments, the Redonkulous race has suspenseful episodes. The episodes kick off right where the last one left off, and within seconds you are back in the action until the final team crosses the final checkpoint and the cycle starts all over again. Every time the teams reach the end, and slowly you get to see their victory screens one by one as there are still some teams struggling to reach the end. It's just perfection. This is also perfectly encapsulated by the intro and the main theme song of this season. I Wanna Be Famous is set aside for a song without lyrics that is upbeat, fast-paced, suspenseful, and to the point, just like the season it represents. Do I like it more than the original song? No, I think nostalgia is still a stronger factor here, but I definitely think it fits the Redonkulous race a lot better than I Wanna Be Famous would have. Not only that, but I really like the intro animation as well. Unlike the Total Drama intro clips, especially the ones from the later seasons, this intro tells you exactly what you're getting into. We're going around the world, you need to collect these tickets, these are the teams that are racing towards the goal, these are some of the spots that we'll be visiting, they will take different types of transport to get there, a more detailed shot of which teams are in the running, and then the logo. This is perfection. It doesn't highlight the characters' personalities like the Total Drama intros do, but by far does it tell you best what you can expect going in. One thing that the Redonkulous race does miss out on is the alliance forming and some of the mind games that play such a key part in the main Total Drama seasons. Especially coming from World Tour, where the latter part of the game is just one big integrated group of people who all have their own tactics and try to outlast one another via manipulation and alliance voting. Redonkulous race shows a surprising lack of that. And while every team could mess up at some point, you can still pretty easily spot the ones that are not going to make it far. But they try to implement a bit of strategy with the boomerang item, which gives a fresh and exciting twist to the game. It creates interesting situations, most notably in the episode where the cadets and the ice dancers boomerang each other and now have to work together to not finish last. But I'm getting ahead of myself. While I absolutely adore the setup of this series, it isn't what pulls the Redonkulous race ahead of the other seasons. So what then? Let's look at the most obvious part next. The characters. Sweet mother of monkey milk, this cast is huge. Contestants are no longer on their own, but are instead paired up in a duo, and there's 18 of them. That means a total of 36 contestants in one season. You would expect that not all of them would get the development that they need, and while this might be true for some of the lower finishing characters, almost all teams get a satisfying arc that could definitely be expanded on, but that doesn't feel like they were underutilized. I'll go over all of the teams, and as a fun challenge, I'll do so in their order of elimination. Oh yeah, this video contains spoilers for the Redonkulous race. But let's be honest, if you're watching this, you've seen the show. And if not, well, we all make mistakes in the heat of passion, Jimbo. The LARPers are the first elimination this season, and what a shame that they are. In total, the Redonkulous race reintroduces just 4 familiar faces of the Total Drama seasons, and one of them is Leonard of all people. You might think that this suggests that they have a fun new plotline thought out for him. And you'd be wrong! I think Leonard might be an actual wizard, because he magically manages to do even less in this season than he does in Parkaju Island. Oh, and let's not forget Tammy. I mean, what is this? The legend of seldom have I seen this little character development? Tennis rivals Jerry and Pete are a pretty solid early boot addition to the cast. It's a nice change of pace to finally have some people who are not teens, which is true for more than one team, but especially noticeable with them. I had a good laugh about them for the short while they were on the show. But those tricksters in the writing studio completely bamboozled me. See, I was sure that Jerry and Pete would be the first to go. Believe me when I say that I like my first boot characters, and I'm pretty good at sniffing them out. And in this case, I was sure that tennis rivals wouldn't get their own little arc, but would instead be tossed aside for a few quick laughs. But then they didn't get eliminated first. And not just that, they finished 4th! And deep inside of me awoke a passionate flame that these two grumpy jokesters would stick around for a long time, only for them to get eliminated second. Very clever, guys. You got me good. Next up are the geniuses. And pretty sure that one of them is called Elodie. And is there a Mary? Not the worst characters on the show, but definitely the most forgettable ones. They managed to leave even less of an impression than Tammy, which is quite the achievement. There's just nothing memorable about them. Except maybe this scene in the cab that was pretty funny. I think given some time that these could have made for an interesting team and might have even been the main villain for the first half of the season. But as they are right now, they are pretty meaningless. I've already forgotten their names again. I forgot that the vegans play such an important role for the few episodes they are on the show. Definitely got the boot too quickly, and I would have loved to see them return. I love Laurie's gradual descent into madness, as well as her slowly realizing that the meat is actually quite tasty, and their naivety is pretty funny as well. They get kind of bullied by the show though. I wish they could have gotten a little more respect from the writers, but that's only because I think they're great characters. And speaking of characters that get eliminated sooner than their screen time would predict, fashion bloggers Tom and Jen were a pretty solid addition to the cast as well. They're a reference to the show's writers Tom McGillis and Jennifer Perch, so I think it makes sense for them to get booted early. I guess in some way it would be a little self-centered to have two characters named after yourself become a key part of the story. I mean, this isn't a Tumblr fanfiction. But gosh, these characters are likable! The fashion tips they keep giving during the show are hilarious. From Tom trying to promote a fast to them getting beaten up by a janitor for crapping on his overall. And I really like their pity fight towards the end. In a weird way, Tom and Jen are like Katie and Sadie done good. They share similar characteristics and plotlines. Not too bright, talk overhyped, get in a fight over who was right. But the big difference is that Tom and Jen are tolerable. It's funny I should mention tolerable. Taylor is probably the most hated character in not just the Redonkulous race, but in all of Total Drama. It's either her or Amy, but they are pretty similar in character, even to the voice actors who place them. But to be fair, the mother and daughter duo were alright. Sure, Taylor was a brat, but it's really not as bad as people make her out to be. I think Taylor realizing she really isn't all that special was a good enough punishment for the character's behavior, though I don't really like how the show ends on them going shopping, suggesting that she isn't going to learn from this experience. The Adversity twins are probably my least favorite duo on this season. They don't do anything insulting or something like that, I just really don't like them. Their character designs are super uninteresting, their joke gets old fast, and they really don't convince me to root for them as underdogs. They're basically a worse version of Cameron, which is not surprising seeing as their designs is the original design they used for Cameron as well. Overall, just very boring to watch. What did surprise me was their elimination position. I imagined that they would make it further, but the show subverted my expectations by actually having the weak characters lose. But then again, they are kind of shafted in the episode where they lose, and it was pretty sad to see them lose to stage fright. Next up is a double elimination, so let's start with the Step Brothers! Step Brothers! We're the Step Brothers! The Step Brothers are really just a one-trick pony, and I think they could have been eliminated a little earlier. Regardless, they are pretty funny characters in my opinion, and I actually started to root a little for them as they stay longer in the show. Their ultimate fraternization is predictable, but I appreciate that the show gives them some time as friends as well. The Redonkulous ways can get a little predictable at times, more on that later, so the fact that Chet and Lorenzo don't get kicked off immediately after becoming best bros, literally, is a nice touch. I like the Rockers quite a bit, which is funny because my girlfriend really didn't, and I can see where she's coming from. Spud is basically more a dog than a human, but on the other hand, it helps make Rock a super likable character that you want to see win. The guy is basically leading a two-man operation on his own, and he manages to get quite far with it. The two can get a little annoying with their constant sound effects, but I found them pretty endearing. It's fitting that we get a double elimination right here, as this episode separates the 9 smaller duos from the 9 main ones. Kicking off those 9 important teams are the father and son duo Dwayne and Dwayne Jr. This was by far my favorite team when I first watched the show, and I was rooting for them to win it all. Especially Dwayne is a hilarious character where they use the age difference I mentioned earlier to the best of their abilities. Dwayne is super old-fashioned and a stubborn know-it-all dad, but at the same time he genuinely cares for his son and does everything in his power to make that feeling mutual. He's constantly trying to crack jokes that really only he finds funny, and all he really wants is to be found cool by his son. Junior is a bit more bland as a character, but I feel like Dwayne wouldn't work as well on his own without Junior there to balance him out. The two work off each other marvelously, perfectly. And speaking of duos that work great off of one another, Owen and Noah are the only duo of which both contestants are Total Drama veterans. And what a pleasant surprise to have these two characters return. As you've probably picked up by the last few episodes, I really like Owen and I think he adds a lot of charm to the season he's in. The writers still had to fix some mistakes with the character, and they make up for his past absence by including him here. Not only that, but they decide to pair him up with Noah. Now, you know how I feel about Noah, and I'm glad to say that Noah finally reaches the potential the character has to offer. Or rather, he finally gets the screen time he deserves. See, Noah in this season isn't exactly comparable to other performances. Noah starts out as his regular old self, but this season Noah isn't quite as witty or sharp as the Total Drama Noah we've come to love. His jokes are still comedy gold, but they just aren't as sharp as they were in previous seasons.
I don't know, did we land in the 70s?
But in return for Noah losing some of his wit, we get a Noah that is so much more charismatic. Don't get me wrong, I love Noah in World Tour and I would have loved to see him make it far there, but World Tour Noah really didn't seem to care that much about other people, and that's including Owen. The two are partnered up in World Tour as real buddies, but that friendship only outs itself from Owen's side, with Noah being a silent enjoyer of their friendship. Noah in World Tour was mostly used for clever humor, but not to form bonds with other contestants or anything. Not as much as us fans tend to believe. In the Redonkulous race, however, Noah is portrayed as far more tender, not only towards Owen, but especially towards Emma. Pairing him up with a girlfriend this season is something I didn't know I needed until I got it. The two have a great dynamic and it turns Noah into a more humane character that is capable of showing some emotions and flaws. Next up are the Goths. They're fine. Yeah, I get it. I said something controversial again. It's not that I don't like the Goths. Most of the times they're pretty funny, and they definitely have some standout moments in the season. Plus, they are definitely scene stealers. But I think in the grand scheme of things, these two are kind of overrated. Their joke is pretty repetitive, and it doesn't change a whole lot throughout the season. And while I am an avid lover of repeating jokes, it still keeps them from reaching favorite status in my book. And I mostly noticed this in the way I approached rooting for characters. Whenever I saw the Goths continue, I was excited that they were still there. Oh, fun, we get to enjoy the Goths another episode longer. But I never found myself really rooting for them. I guess this also stems from the fact that they don't really have an arc this season. Crimson and Ennui find themselves more in single episode stories rather than in multi-episode arcs. This isn't a problem on itself, but it unintentionally leads to one problem the other teams don't have. They are expendable. For most of the teams, you can kind of feel that their story isn't finished. Devin and Carrie were never going to lose quickly with their continuous love story, especially when the 7th stages kicks in. The Noah-Emma love story meant both teams couldn't leave before their story concluded. Jacques and José were bound to get 3rd place from the very first episode. But the Goths? They rarely had a point where eliminating them would be unsatisfying story-wise. And because of that, I found it really hard to get attached to the pair. Invested? Sure, but the Goths definitely felt like the team that would lose out once we got to a point where all remaining teams still had their stories to tell. And with the idea that they could get eliminated any second now, I had a hard time to attach to the characters. By my second time watching, I knew exactly what position the Goths would get in the race, which was a lot further than I would have guessed on first sighting. Having them ultimately fall at the hands of the Ice Dancers was, in my opinion, a pretty fitting way to end their character arc. The pair were clearly among the strongest adversaries of the Ice Dancers. But on second viewing, the two were far more background characters than I remembered them being on first viewing. And whereas some of the jokes really worked, some others really didn't. Let's start with what I didn't like, which are the jokes that simply entail, oh, they are really mysterious, and because of that they are also extremely good at certain things for some reason, but don't expect us to explain why, they are just that wacky. This happens a couple of times during the show, and it's a very tiring joke that fails to entertain me and instead only makes me wonder, sure, but why? Especially because they pair it with characters stating how impossible it is moments earlier. Take episode 16, where Jeff ensures that the bull is unbeatable, and then we cut to Crimson not even holding on while riding. Or episode 20, where all other contestants are nearly dying from the heat and Crimson just goes, ouch. It's a lazy joke telling you typically see in third-rate Family Guy knockoffs. But what I do greatly enjoy about the Goths is the countless interesting situations they manage to place them in. The Icelandic treats and language, the Finnish grunting music, everything about Transylvania, and many, many more of those. It surprised me how many uses they managed to find for two pretty obscure characters when it comes to interest and emotions. So, like I said, the Goths are fine. I'm happy for people that they adore the Goths so much, but I don't really get it. I think as far as weird and comedic comedic characters are concerned, there are far better choices. Ryan and Stephanie are absolutely hilarious. Their constant bickering never ceases to entertain me, and I really like those rose-colored glasses in the beginning of the show. The fact that they have only been together for 2 months is a stroke of genius, and it cracked me up way more than it probably should. Their bickering eventually gets so large that they changed their name from the daters to the haters, and it's a very clever wordplay on the writer's part. Also, their designs are fantastic. Ryan is this gigantic beast of a guy, yet the petite Stephanie is probably the one that would use you as a toothpick. I found their story arc throughout the season really captivating. You never knew what was going to be the next for these two. Their elimination was a pretty strong one, something that holds true for most of the latter season teams. Whoever is still standing at this point has proven their worth multiple times over, and so for Ryan and Stephanie to go out now feels like 2 titans leave the show, and it leaves the other 4 teams remaining in a very suspenseful state. Oh, by the way, can we agree that in 90% of the arguments Stephanie is in the wrong? I don't think people really disagree with this, I just want to make sure. Most of this is clearly Stephanie being unrealistic. That's not just me, right? Okay? Okay. Devin and Carrie surprisingly don't make it to the finale, and writers, I have to say, thank you. Like, really? Thank you? The Best Friends duo is definitely the main duo of this season. They have the biggest story arc of the season and are probably one of, if not the most important characters to the show. The season is always building up to their will they won't they, to an epic climax where they finally get together. And this isn't just the show. I remember back in 2014 when the promo art for this season dropped, and guess who was the first team to be announced? From every angle, the season was going to heavily feature the Best Friends. And heavily featured they got. Unsurprisingly, Devin and Carrie make it pretty far into the Redonkulous race. For me, it became pretty clear that they were going to stick it out all the way once Devin got into the 7 stages of grief thing, and they took 1 or sometimes multiple episodes per stage. And I was kind of bummed about this. Don't get me wrong, Devin and Carrie are a delectable couple to watch. I really enjoyed total drama love stories anyway, and both characters are really likable. Devin is a pretty cool guy, and Carrie is such a sweetie. They're easy characters to root for. What bummed me out was that this season was the chance to redeem the show after Parkatu Island, but instead it seemed like this show would go down the exact same route as Parkatu Island did. Sky was also so obviously going to win that it was just painful to watch. And while Devin and Carrie are both 600 times the characters that Sky wishes to be, it was a shame to watch how our winners were basically set in stone from the beginning. And then in a shocking twist, all my prejudices and expectations about the team were thrown out in an instant. Just like Devin, yeesh. The man has a hard time in this season, but this is just too much. Anyway, Devin gets yeeted off a cliff and the Best Friends nominate the servers to return. Aha, you thought I had forgotten about the servers, didn't you? Yeah, I could hear you typing those comments as soon as I skipped over them. Patience, little one. Nope, the servers get to return because of a non-elimination episode that unintentionally actually had an elimination, almost literally, during the final 4. Can you imagine how hilarious it would have been if they nominated the LARPers to come back? I would have lost it. But overall, I'm really happy with the Best Friends in their arc in this season, and I'm especially glad it didn't end with them simply winning it all. Though admittedly, Devin getting mutilated from head to toe was a wee bit much.
I just pushed Devin off a cliff.
Emotional damage! And the choice to let the servers return, well, you'll just have to wait until I get there. But first, there's the sisters. What an amazing team this is. I need to be careful with how much I praise these teams because it might diminish all the cool things I say about them. And if everybody's awesome, then nobody is. But man, are the sisters enjoyable to watch. I don't really get why they didn't end up in the finale though. Having them get 4th is quite the achievement I wouldn't have necessarily expected beforehand, but with the way the finale turns out, I'd rather have them instead of... Nope, wait, getting ahead of myself again. I've already touched on Noah and Emma as a couple, but if I may repeat myself for a second, what a great couple to the show. Emma is a fantastic counterpart to Noah, as both characters share a lot of similarities whilst being completely different characters. And Kitty is simply wonderful. She is so energetic and enthusiastic and basically the exact opposite of Emma in every way. Emma pretty much dominates Kitty in the earlier episodes of the show, but Kitty slowly starts to fend more and more for herself. And unlike Amy and Sammy, this arc does get a satisfying conclusion. Emma grows to finally let go of her previous boyfriend and comes to realize how much her sister means to her. Both ladies are pretty strong as well. They don't show it in every episode, but sometimes when it matters most, the girls are absolute powerhouses. And while I'd love to spend more time on the duo, I'm really sorry, but I have to move on. Not because we're running out of time or anything. My goodness, this video could just as well be 3 hours long. I need to move on because I cannot keep my excitement in any longer, as in the number 3 spot we find Jacques and José, the Ice Dancers. By far the best team in this entire season. If Heather is the best total drama villain, then Jacques and José are the most likable total drama villains. I absolutely adore these characters, and they utilize the duo aspect of the redonkulous race perfectly on these two. I always saw Jacques as more of the comedic villain and henchman, and José as the true antagonist of this season. But because they are paired up, the duo achieves something that no other total drama villain has ever achieved. They are simultaneously a villain and a comic relief character. Heather, Alejandro, and Courtney were all villains, but never comedic. Scott and Justin had their moments as both, but never at the same time. And because of it, Jacques and José managed to do something that no other total drama villain ever could. I was actively rooting for them to stay in the race. The closest I've come to this is with Justin in Action, but with him it was just more the twist that they gave to the character as his manipulative side is discarded early on in the season. I stated that I was rooting for father and son to win the first time around, but while rewatching everything, I realized how much fun I had with the Ice Dancers and how much I was hoping that they would stick around, while knowing how far they would make it. Both Jacques and José are comedic gold, no pun intended. Jacques gets most of the physical humor, but both are absolutely hilarious by how frantic their behavior is and how desperately they need to win. I enjoy that they can be funny and threatening at the same time. The first episode does a great job at establishing who these characters are. They behave weirdly, but are definitely a force to be reckoned with. But unlike some of the total drama villains, Jacques and especially José get a lot more development and insights to their character later on in the season. You learn a lot about these two, like how José is very superstitious and very claustrophobic. It's a nice change of pace to see a total drama villain with more personal flaws and characteristics other than they are dumb or they are manipulative. And on that note, I appreciate how Jacques and José are both completely over the top insane, but still feel very human and not just like generic villains. The two get a fair share of realistic moments where they aren't just playing the role of the villain, but are trying to satisfy their own goals or even try to cooperate in order to not get last. The Ice Dancers are also a pretty serious antagonistic threat to our main characters, which is impressive considering that this season rids itself of the idea of manipulation and voting altogether. The Ice Dancers play a little mind games with other contestants or sabotage other teams to ensure not only their own safety, but also the departure of their biggest rivals. From the very first episode, these guys were destined to become third. Throughout the show, they are doing everything in their power to finish first, and this often leads to them breaking a lot of rules and disadvantage other teams on the way. They consider bronze the color of failure, and every time they finish third, they absolutely lose it. So, of course, the only way to finish their story was to snatch their victory away right at the end. With their pre-established hatred for bronze, it makes their elimination all the more satisfying. All in all, I'd go as far as to say that the Ice Dancers are my favorite villains of the entire Total Drama franchise. The Ice Dancers' main rivals are the Cadets, and again, this is a pretty great duo. I'm not as big of a fan of them as I am of other teams on this list, but man, do these two play well off each other. MacArthur is this loud, rude, and self-centered badass who doesn't take nothing from no one, while Sanders is far more calculated, kind-hearted, and careful in her approaches. Over the season, the two learn a lot from each other, with MacArthur steadily getting more respect for Sanders, and Sanders starting to appreciate and apply some of MacArthur's behavior. The rivalry with the Ice Dancers is probably my favorite part about their duo, as these are the moments where the two of them set aside their own indifferences and go all out to stay on top. What makes me like them slightly less is probably MacArthur, who has a tendency to get a bit annoying from time to time. And on her own, Sanders can be quite bland from time to time as well. Like I said, the two play off of each other excellently, but on their own they would probably be less successful. And finally, we arrive at the Surfer Dudes, who are the winners in the season that I watched. I've talked about Jeff several times throughout this video series, so you'll probably know that I think he's a great character who gets completely sidelined after Island. It's so good and to finally see him return to his former glory. Having him lose from Bridget was a good choice in my opinion. The last time the two were together as contestants, they were underwhelming. Jeff and Bridget as Aftermath hosts, while fun, didn't always get a real spotlight either. Jeff finally gets his well-deserved second chance this season, and I couldn't be happier to see the character return. Though I have to say that this Jeff and the Jeff from Island are not exactly the same character. They both still have that laid-back party-hardy attitude, but Redonkulous Race Jeff is a bit more dumbed down from his Island counterpart. I personally don't mind this change, but it was something that piqued my interest. And since Jeff needs a partner, they give him a Brody. Brody is pretty fun. He masks Jeff's loss of intelligence a little by being even dumber, but beyond that, the two are basically clones of each other. A fun combination to be sure, but they don't utilize the duo gimmick as much with them as they do with other teams. Which, yeah, can be expected if one of them is already a fleshed out contestant in the Total Drama universe. The biggest difference between the two is that Brody takes a liking to MacArthur, something that the writers obviously couldn't use Jeff for considering he is still in a relationship with Bridget. I mean, it didn't stop Bridget, but you catch my drift. But the thing is, Brody and MacArthur's relationship might be my second least favorite couple in Total Drama. Not like they're really a couple anyway, but I just don't feel the connection between them at all. Brody swooning over MacArthur were some of my least favorite moments of the season. Furthermore, they are a solid addition to the roster. I wish that Jeff got a chance to interact more with Owen though, considering that the two were pretty close on Island. But those nitpicks all fail in comparison to my biggest complaint with these characters. Why do the surfers win after returning? In episode 21, all 6 teams interact with each other as they form 2 super teams. A genuine great twist to the predetermined formula we have been following so far this season. The daters, ice dancers and cadets all bundle their forces into the axis of evil, as the 3 good guy teams are placed in a second superstar team. In a shocking twist, the axis of evil actually finishes first, and suddenly the realization kicks in that one of these 3 super likable teams is going home. It was a heartbreaking moment watching the show. Ultimately, the surfers end up forfeiting the win to let the best friends pass, and they get kicked off the race. It was a bittersweet moment to see them go. But then, as formulated as so excellently in a previous section, if I may say so myself, Devin is yeeted off a cliff. And rather than letting things be and just continuing with the team still in the race, the writers decide to bring back the surfers 2 episodes before the finale. From this point forth, the surfers feel like some kind of fever dream, where all of a sudden they are back into the race and are immediately into what is basically the 2-episode finale. I couldn't wrap my head around what this was. Surely they wouldn't get brought back to get kicked off the very next scene. Third place was almost certainly going to the ice dancers, and if the surfers would have gotten it, it would have diminished the ice dancers' arc in the season. Were the surfers going to win? And indeed, so it happened that the surfers suddenly won one of the 2 alternative endings of the Redonkulous race. Why? I absolutely have no problem with the surfers winning, but not after you decide to cut them from the race towards the end. It feels completely unfair to the remaining teams that now all of a sudden these 2 are back in the race. I joked about it earlier, but what if the best friends had indeed chosen the team to return that got cut way earlier? It would be ridiculous, even for a show that is literally named after the word. It helps a little that the surfers managed to make it to episode 21 before getting cut and have effectively only been gone for 3 full episodes at this point, but still, this is a finale spot we're talking about. I really don't understand why they chose to go down this path. If you want the surfers to win, that's completely fine, they're good finalists. If you want them to make the ultimate sacrifice as a way of shocking the audience, go for it. But do both and you end up with this weird limbo state where the surfers basically competed the entire race and still feel like they don't belong in the final 4, let alone on the podium with the victory. It's such an anticlimactic way to end this story. You want your winners to be the ones who survived through everything, not to be 2 guys who dropped out towards the end but then accidentally got to return because an emu decided to play cornhole with Devin as the beanbag. On an unrelated sidetrack, I have this conspiracy theory about how they foreshadowed this ending from episode 1. Okay, basically it goes like this. The first episode of this season is called None Down, 18 to Go. Now this title doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's going to be a winning team, and the term 18 to go suggests that there are still 18 teams to drop out of the race. But since there's only 18 teams to compete, this would mean everybody loses. Unless the writers were actually foreshadowing the elimination and ultimate comeback and victory for the surfers. In the alternative ending where the surfers win, the statement 18 to go is actually true, as the cadets are the 18th team to be eliminated, leaving the previously eliminated Jeff and Brody as the sole winners of the show. That way everybody is eliminated and the statement is true. But hey, that's just an idea I had. And to cap off our gigantic list of characters, we have the only person without a natural counterpart this season, Dawn. The Redonkulous race rids itself of almost everything Total Drama related, and that includes host Chris McLean, replacing him with Dawn. When he was first announced, I wasn't exactly ecstatic about his inclusion. Chris always brought life to the show, and Dawn seemed like a boring, more laid-back version of Chris. But when Dawn actually got to appear on the main stage, I thought he did an alright job. The guy was entertaining, and while nowhere as extravagant as Chris, he did a good job in tying the story together. It was after a couple of rewatches though that I started to fully appreciate Dawn in the scope of this season. Chris hadn't exactly had the best track record the last couple of seasons, going from reality host to straight up supervillain. The challenges would mostly come down to torture exercises because Chris felt like it. The longer he was on the show, the more Chris became an intolerable douche who just did whatever he felt like, whenever he felt like it. Basically, Chris became your average TV celebrity. So having him cut from this season was actually actually a great time for the character to take a breather. Every season up until this point had this maniac at the center of attention, but now we get this super basic guy just explaining the challenges to us. And this is a great change of pace. Don is a nice and kind-hearted character who still has his norms and values straight, reminiscing of the earlier days of Chris McLean. He's charismatic, fun, and most of all, fair. Don never takes the center of attention the way Chris does, but with 36 characters battling for a piece of spotlight in 20-minute episodes, having a simplistic host like Don is absolutely what this show needs. He adds a lot to the show without ever distracting from the main focal point of the show, which are the characters competing. I also feel like Don is more concerned with the characters in the race than Chris is. I'm honestly surprised later season Chris is able to recall all the names of the characters competing, because he's completely indifferent on who remains, as long as he gets to bully them while they're there. With Don, however, you can clearly see that the man secretly has some preferences about who takes home the win, and especially about who doesn't. He has some great interactions with teams like the Goths and the Ice Dancers, and overall I think Don is a great host for this season. Plus, Don actually says my name in the show.
You're hurting Silly Billy! No!
Okay, well, almost, but it's not like anybody's actually going to say my name.
Oh, silly Billy, it's what you do the night before the wedding.
Okay, sisters win, sisters best team, Emma best girl confirmed. Moving on. And finally, that wraps up the character sections of this review. So, is the Redonkulous Race #1 for its characters?
Nope.
Well, what is it then? See, the Redonkulous Race may have fantastic characters, but so do seasons like Island and World Tour. Revenge of the Island's biggest strength was its characters. And yeah, some of the 4th gen characters from the Redonkulous Race are better than the first 3 generations, but a lot of characters are also clearly surpassed by what came before. What more could there be that raises the Redonkulous Race above all other seasons? One thing I haven't talked about yet are the different locations this season offers. And finally, I think I have a concrete point that makes the Redonkulous Race stand out above all the others. The episodes and locations in this season are phenomenal. Going around the world allows for so many variety when it comes to scenery, culture, and general feeling of the episodes. And while World Tour also had this premise, which might explain why it's #2, I feel like Redonkulous Race utilizes the idea better. Redonkulous Race is just far more creative with their locations. If I ask you to come up with 26 well-known locations around the world, I guarantee you that you will have named more of the locations that World Tour visits than the Redonkulous Race. And that's including the fact that World Tour has some episodes where they don't visit different countries. Not only that, but the Redonkulous Race gets a lot more creative in their use of the visited locations, taking far more inspiration from the norms and habits of the countries they visit. World Tour has a couple of episodes this can also be attributed to, but the season also has a lot of challenges that don't particularly match the country they're in, or could easily be located somewhere else without many changes to the challenge itself. Meanwhile, the Redonkulous Race really capitalizes on the locations they visit. Some of my favorite examples include picking tea leaves in Darjeeling, eating spices in Morocco, and performing a haka in New Zealand. But again, just the locations and challenges are not what lift this season above every other one. Maybe if I work the other way around? Yeah, sure, that could work. Let's find some criticism of the show and see if I can disagree with that. But where do I find a community of people who like to argue about their favorite show? Hey, who invited the little robot? A couple of months back, I asked you, the viewers, what your biggest criticism of the Redonkulous Race was. And boy, did you deliver. Thanks to everyone who took the time to hate on the Redonkulous Race for me. And now allow me to tell you why you're wrong. Oh no, I just realized what a terribly bad idea it is to roast the handful of people that decide to be here at channel launch. I promised shoutouts. Thanks guys, don't take this the wrong way. By far the most common complaint about the Redonkulous Race was about the amount of non-elimination episodes. And I can see why, it's something I noticed too. But after a quick search I found out that World Tour has the exact same amount of non-elimination episodes. Yeah, I know, big shocker, right? But I feel like World Tour is a lot more clever with hiding their non-elimination episodes. One of the ways World Tour masks this lack of elimination are the aftermath episodes, which tell you beforehand that nobody's going to get eliminated. And while I have expressed my criticism that the episodes contribute nothing challenge-wise, they can serve as fun interruptions of the main story. I think what makes Redonkulous Race stand out among the other seasons with many non-elimination episodes is the structure that it follows. Whereas I earlier credited the Redonkulous Race for being immensely suspenseful from beginning to end, this setup of the show also means that a non-elimination episode is a huge anticlimax to end an episode on. More so than any other season, the Redonkulous Race is constantly plaguing you with this question of, ooh, who's gonna be last? Who's gonna drop out? Ooh. It's even included in many of Don's opening
speeches.
With only 9 teams remaining, things are heating up. Who's about to get burned? Only 8 teams remain, so things are bound to get fierce. But today's a new day, and anything can happen. Hopefully this week I get to kick off a team I don't like.
So having the final team finish only for Dawn to happily announce that once again this was a non-elimination episode is just absolutely disappointing. Even if your favorite team is saved from elimination, it still means that we don't make any progress story-wise. I think user Trinity Monkey hits it out of the park with his observation about the pacing of the show, where there's 2 non-elimination episodes prior to the double elimination of the Rockers and the Step Brothers, and then another non-elimination. I get that the show wants to build up some more screen time for the 2 before having the big double elimination shock, but I feel it would have been better to spread this out a little more. Because with this setup, you now get a second non-elimination directly after the first one. And I think that's the point at which we all collectively go, what? Again? It's such a big contradiction to the fast-paced setting of the show. Instead of that one slip-up meaning you're likely to go home, now one slip-up means that there's about a 50-50 chance you will indeed be eliminated. But then again, with 26 episodes planned out and 18 teams in the running, you are bound to run into a few non-eliminations. I just think the Redonkulous race doesn't mask them as well as other seasons do. Another criticism some of you guys presented was that many of the plot lines lingered on too long in the show, especially when it comes down to the best friends and the daters. And yeah, this is a valid criticism too. I don't mind the daters that much, but the best friends could definitely feel very back and forth without a lot of progress in their storyline. But again, I think the main reason for this is the length of the season and the way they handle non-eliminations. The characters never get a break within the show to let their developing storylines rest a bit, something the Aftermath shows did allow for in their respective seasons. Still, I think the writers did the best they could with the characters under the notion that they had to compete in every single episode until the end. Okay, so the answer wasn't really there either. But what about what you liked most? Maybe I missed something? Let's see here. AliWaz77 makes a good point about the happy conclusions every team gets. At the end of every elimination, the eliminated team gets to reflect on what they've learned from the race and how they've grown as characters. And every single team gets to go off on a happy note. This makes the Redonkulous race by far the most feel-good season of the bunch. Mein Se tut weh, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but it looks German, talks about how none of the characters feel like a background character, which is absolutely true as well. While some of the earlier teams don't get a lot of screen time, each contestant gets their own little moment to shine within the show, which is an impressive feat for a cast of 36 players. TrentKD123 has a great remark about female representation in the finale too. It surprises me that Total Drama can oftentimes be a pretty male-centered series. Look for example at Revenge of the Island, which doesn't only have an all-male finale, but also an all-male team. Redonkulous Race finally gives us a duo of women as the winners, and honestly, I would probably have preferred an all-female finale with the sisters as the other winning duo if the alternative is the surfers. None of these things make the season seem like the standout. What more is there to say? How can I prove to you that the Redonkulous Race is number 1? Wait, I don't need to prove it. The Redonkulous Race is just my favorite season because it is. I know I said I wouldn't end things this way, but after all my rambling trying to explain why this season is my favorite, why wouldn't I? Not everyone is going to agree with my choice, but that's okay. Everybody has their own opinions, their own preferences, their own voices to be shared and heard. Sure, the entire goal of this video series was to find the best season, but the underlying reason for it was that I wanted to share my opinion with you guys. Because at the end of the day, I'm just like you, a passionate fan of the Total Drama franchise who wants to discuss the show with like-minded people. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to all this stuff I had to say about the show. I had a lot of fun making the series, and I hope I could drag you along in that fun. Fun. That's it. The Redonkulous Race is my number 1 season because I had the most fun with it. All throughout this video, I had this unexplainable feeling of why the Redonkulous Race is the best one, and now I know what it is. It's the plain joy I experienced while watching and thinking about the show. And on that note, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for sticking this series out to the end. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. The series might be over, but I'm absolutely not done making videos. I'm not just going to be doing more Total Drama content, but I'm going to spread out to other things I enjoy watching too. I might even have a little Minecraft project in the works as well, which you may or may not be seeing soon. So if that's something you enjoy too, consider sticking around a little longer. One last time, I thank you for watching. This has been Silly Billy, and remember that if you don't like someone, you first make sure that they're not secretly a fan of Dinosaur Ninja 4 too. Houdoe!